Support or undermine questions are a brand new question type for the digital SAT, but they're also one of the more difficult ones to tackle. Hi, I'm Megan with Principia Tutors and Consultants, and today we're going to learn a systematic way of approaching support or undermine questions. So let's start off by talking some strategy. While it might seem like you can just white knuckle your way through the test, there's actually a specific way to approach each question and a clear reason for eliminating each answer choice. So the very first thing we want to do is identify the question type. And you're probably thinking that's pretty obvious. But if we don't know what question we're dealing with, you're not going to know when to use the strategies you're about to learn. So all support undermine questions have a wording that's pretty similar to this. Which finding, if true, would most directly support the student's claim? Which finding, if true, would most directly undermine the researcher's hypothesis? Okay, so now that you know when you're dealing with a support undermine question, you need to locate the claim within the paragraph. Sometimes the claim is pretty obvious and the paragraph will literally say the researchers claim that cats are wonderful companions or something like that. Other times it might not have that explicit tag. So in that case, you can brainstorm the main idea of the paragraph by using topic plus so what. Don't worry about what that is yet. We'll discuss that a little bit more when we look at our first question. All right, so after we've identified the claim of the passage, we have to paraphrase the claim. So I make all my students do this because it often can be relatively straightforward to find the claim, but really having a grasp of what the claim is saying can be a little bit more difficult. So by doing this, you just practice making sure you know what's going on and what the question is kind of asking you. And then after we paraphrase the claim, we want to brainstorm our own evidence before we even read the answer choices. That might seem a little bit odd, but if we go into the answer choices without a clear direction, it's incredibly easy to get sidetracked. So go in with a game plan, and that can make it a lot easier to choose the correct answer. All right. And then the last thing we got to do is make sure our answer choice matches all parts of the claim. So now you're finally allowed to read the answer choices. So this is the broad strategy. So we're going to be keeping this in mind, but let's look at a first question and see how this kind of looks. All right. So our first question, we know it's going to be a support question because it says, which finding, if true, would support the author's claim? All right. So we're going to be looking for evidence that's going to be like saying why this is working out. Let's read the passage. The following is an excerpt from Taylor Swift's homage to Clara Bow from The Conversation. Bow's career got its start in her native New York, where in 1921, at the age of 16, she won a beauty contest and got a bit part in a film as her prize. Bow took every opportunity to be on set and learn the craft. She showed up early, stayed late, and studied how to work with the cameras and lights. In a nascent film industry, Bow's professionalism and graciousness defined her success. Okay, so I've located the claim kind of at the very bottom, and I would say in the nascent film industry, Bow's professionalism and graciousness defined her success. However, this doesn't have that explicit tag that I mentioned on the previous slide. So you might be like, oh my gosh, how would I find that? So we're going to use topic plus so what. So topic plus so what is like a little formula. We start off with the topic, and that's usually like 1 to 2 words about what the passage is about. So in this case, it would be Clara Bow. Like that would be our topic. And then so what is, why is the author writing about Clara Bow? What is the author saying about Clara Bow? So I would say it would be Clara Bow plus it's talking about her like success in the film career and that she worked really hard, like it's talking about showing up early, staying late, that sort of thing. And that really matches up with the claim we've identified. So that is kind of how we can approach it if we're not positive what the claim might be. Okay, so now that we've identified it, let's paraphrase it. So I'd paraphrase this to say, Bow's success is linked to her professionalism. So then when I'm thinking about evidence, we're going to need evidence that would mention her professionalism and her successful career. So we need both of those elements. So let's look at our answer choices. Today, when journalists cover rising actors who throw themselves into their work, they often say they are following in Clara Bow's footsteps. So immediately I'm like, I don't think this is the right answer. This is focusing too much on journalists and then rising actors. And we're really just talking about Clara Bow in this passage. So that's not going to be our answer. Then if we're looking at B, we have, after Bow's death in 1965, her obituary detailed not only the numerous popular films in which she starred, but also her work ethic and dedication to the craft. Okay, this is looking really good. It's talking about her success, like the popular films, and it's talking about her work ethic. So that's like probably professionalism. So B's looking pretty good. C says, even though Bow won a bit part in the film, her scene was cut from it. So her success came later in her career. Okay, so this is talking about success. However, the tone overall is like a little bit sad, a little negative, and it's not necessarily focusing on her professionalism. So C isn't going to be working for us. D says that many fans of Bo name her dramatic facial expressions as one of the key attributes they admire about her performances. So this is talking about something she's good at that helps make her successful, but it's not talking necessarily about professionalism. So D is not going to be working for us either. So that makes B the correct answer. Let's see how this would look for an undermine question. So let's read through the passage. It was the spring of 1618, and Matthias, Holy Roman Emperor and past King of Bohemia, had devised a plan that would prove calamitous. Seeking to reverse the concessions granted a decade prior by his brother and predecessor Rudolf II, he tasked his deputies with reining in the rights of Bohemian Protestants. But these Protestants lived in a tradition of religious dissidence, preceding Martin Luther by a century. They were accustomed to a degree of autonomous rule and religious freedom uncommon elsewhere in Habsburg realms. When Matthias's deputies halted the construction of chapels in Klostergrab and Braunau, Protestants, noblemen, and free burghers found themselves united in their indignation. All right, so our claim is going to be that kind of last chunk. Protestants, noblemen, and free burghers found themselves united in their indignation. So I might paraphrase this to say, stopping construction of the chapels caused Protestants, noblemen, and free burghers to become aligned in their anger toward Matthias. Okay. Now, we're not supporting this. We're making sure we undermine it. So undermine means kind of like negate it. So the evidence we're going to want to look for is saying that that group of people is not united, or they're not united specifically by their anger. Okay, so if we're looking at our answer choices, we have A, while free burghers were in a lower social class than noblemen, they congregated alongside the noblemen on the outskirts of Braunau to establish a church in which all the people were accepted. That would probably that would support our claim. And that's not what we want to do. We're undermining. So we'll get rid of A. B says, while the Protestants, noblemen, and burghers were frustrated at the deputies' impediment of their chapels, the groups clashed over socioeconomic differences, preventing them from formulating a strategy to combat Matthias's lack of tolerance. Okay, so this shows that they're not able to really unite. So B might be working to negate it. So let's look at the rest of them to see how those might be looking. C says, even though the Protestants were prevented from building their chapel, they continued to practice their beliefs within their own homes. This would support the claim. That's not going to be our answer. D says, the Protestants harbored a secret relief that they no longer had to continue construction of their chapel, as they had run out of funds in which to build it. This is way too extreme. This doesn't build off of anything we've kind of learned about within the paragraph. So the answer choices aren't going to just be like willy-nilly, any information goes. They have to kind of stem from things we're maybe thinking about already within the paragraph. So D is not going to be working as our answer. Therefore, B is going to be the correct answer. Now it's time for something very exciting. It's your turn to answer a question. So I would encourage you to pause the video and use the strategies we've just been talking about. And then you can press play again when you're ready to see if you answered it correctly. Okay, so let's dive in. Okay, I'm going to talk about how I would have answered it. So as you've probably already read the answer choices, I'm just going to kind of dive in with what I would choose as my claim, paraphrase claim, that sort of thing. So my claim would be he ultimately destroys the companion after being plagued with ambivalence. Okay, so some of the key words you might want to define here is what does ambivalence mean? So my paraphrased claim would be Frankenstein is torn between wanting to provide the monster with a companion and thinking providing him with one is a bad idea. So ambivalence means being torn in two directions. So we're going to want an answer choice that shows both him wanting to provide a companion and him not to provide one. So the correct answer is going to be C. So the wording here that really makes this correct is we have, I had been moved by the sophisms of the being I created. I had been struck senseless by his fiendish threats, but now. So whenever we see a word like but or however, we're having a pretty big shift. So we want to notice that. For the first time, the wickedness of my promise burst upon me. I shudder to think that the future ages might curse me as their past. So that's specifically saying the monster had tricked me sort of into believing that this might be a good idea, but now I've realized it's a bad idea. So that's showing that ambivalence element that we need to prove this claim. So C is going to be correct. A couple of final things to keep in mind before I let you go is we want to remember to use your scratch paper. So scratch paper is not just for the math section of the SAT. Use it for the reading and writing modules. Jot down notes, paraphrase the paragraph. Writing things down is really helpful just to make sure that you have something that centers you. Because even if you're like, okay, in my head I've answered it, but then as you read the answer choices, that original thing that you brainstorm might shift. And we want to have something kind of concrete we can go back to of like, okay, this is really what I was thinking at the moment. If you're spending more than a minute on a problem and aren't getting anywhere, just skip it and come back to it. It's way better to save your time for questions that you're more likely to get correct than spend a lot of time on a question you might ultimately miss and then have to race through questions you would have gotten if you didn't have to rush. So that would be my final recommendations. And now you're ready to tackle whatever support or undermine questions come your way.